What's up, everybody? Luke Braun here from Locked On Vikings, coming to you from the garage. And the Vikings have selected at pick 66, the pick they got from the Jets for trading down yesterday. They got Kellen Mond, the quarterback out of Texas A&M. There was a little bit of buzz that the Vikings would go quarterback in day 2 and maybe try to go for one of those upper echelon backup quarterback types, and Kellen Mond fits exactly that bill. He fits the scheme. He fits the zone scheme that the Vikings do. He has a good deep ball. He can throw on the run. His problems are mostly on the mental side of the game right now in terms of reading defenses and especially reading blitzes pre-snap, where he can get himself into trouble sometimes. So for now, he fixes to be the backup quarterback, but potentially down the road, if he can polish his game up a little bit and learn a little more about NFL defenses, he might even be able to compete to be the heir apparent to Kirk Cousins should the Vikings want to move a different direction. It's an interesting pick at the 3rd round, especially with other needs on the roster, but the Vikings pick 3 more times here in the 3rd round as it stands, so buckle up.
What's going on, Houston Texans fans? I'm sure at this point the Bulls on parade are ready to collectively march and parade to the team located off 16 and Kirby and turn in their fan pass. The Houston Texans started their 2021 draft by addressing their needs, their offensive needs. However, their first pick at 67 is more than questionable and a head-scratcher. I'm John Hickman of Locked On Texans, your daily Texans talk and news update, here to discuss the 3rd round for the Houston Texans draft. Stanford quarterback Davis Mills, and wide receiver out of Michigan, Nico Collins, will now rock the Texans blue. Rumors of life after Deshaun Watson became louder and louder throughout the week, which propelled the Houston Texans to draft a possible replacement who will have the chance to sit behind Tyrod Taylor for the foreseeable future and learn from quarterback coach Pep Hamilton. Texans traded into the 3rd round to draft Nico Collins, a 6'4" wide receiver who averaged nearly 20 yards per catch for the Wolverines in 2019.
The Falcons added 2 plug-and-play starters on day 2 of the 2021 NFL Draft. I'm Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons. The Falcons moved back 5 spots at the top of round 2, going from 35 to 40, picking up an early 4th round pick from the Denver Broncos via trade. That gives the Falcons another opportunity to shore up as many holes as they can on the defensive side of the ball. Things got rolling on that side of the ball at the start of round 2, using that acquired Broncos pick on Central Florida safety Richie Grant. Grant is considered one of the top safeties in this draft class due to his instincts, playmaking skills, and versatility. Those things make him a great fit in defensive coordinator Dean Pease's defense, and he should be plugged in immediately as a starter for the Falcons at free safety, joining Duron Harmon, the veteran, in the back 7. In round 3, the Falcons added offensive line help with Michigan tackle Jalen Mayfield, although there's a high probability that Mayfield will get his initial opportunity playing inside for the Falcons at left guard. That's where the Falcons still have a vacancy in their starting lineup due to the release of James Carpenter earlier this offseason. Mayfield's college experience was exclusively at right tackle, starting a combined 15 games over the past 2 years, with an injury cutting short his 2021 season. It's likely that the Falcons could have an open competition that includes Mayfield at left guard, where currently swing tackle Matt Gano and free agent signee Josh Andrews are penciled atop the depth chart. With day 2 in the books, the Falcons are expected to continue to address their defense with 6 picks on day 3, but I could also see them adding some offensive help with some running back depth. For more coverage on the Falcons 2021 draft class, check out Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, Giant fans? Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants, with you, and it was another busy day for the New York Giants in the 2021 NFL Draft. The Giants continue to trade, wheel and deal. Trader Dave was added again, and in 30 years of covering this team, I've never seen anything like this before. The Giants making trades in each of the first 3 rounds of the 2021 Draft. Moves made both for the present and for the future. So without your scorecards, let's get you caught up on what the Giants did on Friday night. In round 2 of the draft, the Giants swapped places with the Miami Dolphins, moving down actually 8 spots to number 50 overall. There they were able to pluck Georgia edge rusher Azeez Ojulari. And in return, they also received Miami's 3rd round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. So the Giants addressed their edge rusher need in round 2. Now in round 3, the Giants actually traded up as opposed to back. So they sent pick number 76 to the Denver Broncos, who had pick number 71. And the Giants also sent the Broncos pick number 164, which is their 5th round pick that they got from the Chicago Bears Thursday night in the 1st round pick trade that they made with the Bears. So with the new pick, the Giants traded up to get UCF cornerback Aaron Robinson. So again, for those of you keeping score at home, here's what the Giants have for next year. They have all 7 of their draft picks, plus an extra 1st, an extra 3rd, and an extra 4th rounder. So right now they have 10 draft picks for 2022. What they'll be able to do with them? Well, they could need another quarterback depending on what happens with Daniel Jones, or maybe they're going to use those picks to trade around. We'll find out, obviously, as we get closer to next year's draft. For more on the New York Giants, keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
Gino Camilleri here from the Locked On Eagles podcast. The Philadelphia Eagles moved back from pick 70 to 73 while acquiring pick 191 from the Carolina Panthers. The Eagles must have felt confident that their man would be there. Their man is edge rusher / defensive tackle Milton Williams. For those who don't know Milton Williams, he is one of the best athletes in this class. He was one of the best testers at the edge rush position. He has acquired some of the best statistics at Louisiana Tech. He isn't one of the biggest names in this class, but he is one of the bigger guys when it comes to the length and his athleticism. He is off the charts. He will be somebody that the Eagles look to supplant the place of Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett if he is to move on after his 5th-year option. Philadelphia Eagles take Milton Williams, defensive tackle / edge rusher, out of Louisiana Tech. Gino Camilleri here from the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Washington football team fans? I'm Chris Russell, co-host of the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast with David Harrison 5 days a week. The Washington football team making 2 third-round selections on Friday night, one via the Trent Williams to San Francisco trade and one their own natural pick. With the number 74 pick overall, which was the one acquired from San Francisco for Williams last draft weekend, they took Benjamin St-Juste from the University of Minnesota and hailing out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. St-Juste is a 6'3 plus corner with obviously long arms, a long frame, physical, competitive at the catch point, and certainly going to be interesting to see how they eventually use him. Could he flip inside to safety? We'll have to see. He was number 3 on both David Harrison and myself, top 3 target at corner list that we released on Twitter on Wednesday at LockedWFT Pod. Meanwhile, with the number 82 pick overall, also again in the 3rd round, Washington took Dyami Brown, a dynamic wide receiver from the University of North Carolina. He put up 20 touchdowns combined over the last 2 years, just shy of 1,100 yards last year. He's not a speed burner, but he's more than capable of getting down the field, getting contested balls, pretty good route runner, and I think it's going to be interesting to see the impact that he has on the rest of the room, guys like Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon, maybe even Antonio Gandy Golden. That's all for now. Keep listening to the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast with David Harrison and myself. Thanks for watching Locked On Now.
Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys, and this is your Locked On Now. With the 75th pick in the 3rd round, the Dallas Cowboys selected defensive lineman Osa Odigizua from UCLA. And the Cowboys got a kind of squatty, long-armed former wrestler who should be able to play up and down their defensive line unit. He can play 3 technique, he can play 1 technique. I think he can play 4-eye, he can play 5. He's strong, he can get off the ball. He's slightly undersized. He's kind of like a little bit of a long-armed Tyrone Crawford. And hopefully he can serve in a similar role where he can play inside and out and give the Cowboys a little bit of versatility to move things around. if the Cowboys decide to play a different kind of multiple fronts this year and maybe mix it up outside of the traditional 3 technique, 1 technique roles, this should be a good player to be able to plug up and down in different spots. So I think the Cowboys got good value here because defensive tackle was getting off the table quickly, and the guy they got is a guy who could play.
What is good, everybody? Ross Jackson here, host of Locked On Saints, and come on, you know I'm excited about this one. The New Orleans Saints moving up to pick number 76, trading away selections 98 and 105, their third-round compensatory picks, and they draft one of my favorite guys in this draft, Stanford cornerback Paulson Adebo, the 6'1", 198-pound former wide receiver, has incredible ball skills, humongous hands, has the ability to really create plays and generate turnovers. He's a turnover machine, 4 interceptions in 2018 as well as in 2019, and several pass deflections as well, including leading conferences in one of those seasons. He is a fantastic player, and I think he was one of those guys that was a fringe first rounder that ended up suffering because of opting out of the 2020 season, and therefore his draft stock was a little bit low, but the Saints, in typical New Orleans Saints fashion, jump up and get what could be one of the steals of this draft, and I really, truly believe that. Paulson Adebo, extremely excited to see him on his way to the Big Easy. You want to keep up with more information about him and the rest of this draft class, and of course, your New Orleans Saints, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Saints podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it!
What's up, guys? This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, here to recap both of the Chargers' third-round picks from tonight. With the 77th overall pick, the Chargers select Josh Palmer, the wide receiver from Tennessee, and with the 97th pick, they end up going Trey McKitty, the tight end from Georgia. Starting with Josh Palmer, this was a little bit questionable because the Chargers did not have a big need at wide receiver, and most experts had Palmer as a 5th-round pick potentially. So what he does bring to the table is a guy that can play on the outside, who can make contested catches, who can be a jump ball receiver on the outside for the Chargers, maybe as an insurance plan to Mike Williams, who's a free agent after the 2021 season, had a great Senior Bowl week that definitely raised his stock, but still a little bit head scratching there. And then with Trey McKitty, he's in a unique situation as well because he only had 6 catches last year from Georgia after transferring from Florida State after 3 seasons where he was much more productive, but he's a guy who has said that he's an overall tight end. He can block on the inside, he can play H-back. He was a move tight end for Georgia, moving all around the formation, but a guy that definitely has some questions at the next level, and the value was questionable again as he was thought to be a potential 5th or 6th round pick by most experts. So the Chargers didn't have a blocking tight end on the roster. This is a guy that brings some athleticism and toughness to the position for them, but definitely not one that I saw coming. If you want to keep up with all of the latest Chargers draft pick and everything Chargers, make sure to tune into Locked On Chargers, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Luke Braun here from Locked On Vikings, and the Vikings have selected again at pick 78. This time they take their second third-rounder of the day in Chaz Surratt, the linebacker, former quarterback out of the University of North Carolina. He was a quarterback convert 2 years ago, so he's as green gets at the linebacker position, but he's a really good athlete. He's got good height, good speed, and all that stuff, but he has a pretty big power issue, as you can see on some of his tape, especially his tape against another Vikings draft pick, Christian Darrisaw. So we'll have to see if his ability as a linebacker can grow as he can learn more and get a hold of some NFL coaching to live up to that third-round draft stock.
I'm your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast, here to talk about round number 3 in the NFL draft, where the Raiders go back-to-back, pick number 79 and pick number 80, and they go all defense, which is, well, what they need the most of. Malcolm Koonce from Buffalo, he goes number 79 overall, situational pass rusher. He's a guy that can get after the quarterback early. He can get after him often. 3rd and long, you'll see Koonce in there. He can be that kind of a guy. Very unique Ngakoue type, which the Raiders picked up in free agency earlier this offseason. Then at 80, Divine Diablo, safety / linebacker out of Virginia Tech. He's a very fast guy, can cover a lot of ground. You'll hear comparisons to Cam Chancellor, who was a member of the Legion of Boom in Seattle. And of course, Gus Bradley is the new defensive coordinator for the Raiders. And well, he was there in Seattle when Cam Chancellor was doing his thing when they were calling him Bam Bam. Divine Diablo has that opportunity to be a guy like that. A 3rd round pick. Really good pick as the Raiders go all defense on day 2 of the 2021 NFL Draft. Pick number 79, Malcolm Kuntz from Buffalo. Pick number 80, Devon Diablo from Virginia Tech. I'm your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast.
I'm Landon McCool with Locked On Cowboys, and this is your Locked On Now. With the 84th pick in the 3rd round, the Dallas Cowboys select Chauncey Golson from Iowa as defensive lineman. Another power defensive lineman with long arms, and it looks like the Cowboys are clearly trying to remake that defensive line. At last pick, they picked Oso Odighizuwa, was kind of an inside-out player. Now they've managed to pick a guy who is a outside-in player. So the Cowboys clearly are looking to focus and get longer and more powerful of the defensive line. And by choosing Chauncey Golson from Iowa, they certainly have done that. Not exactly the bendiest player. He can get off the ball, and he uses those long arms well. But outside of that, not exactly the elite athlete you're looking at defensive end, but versatile, able to use in a lot of different directions. Absolutely.
On night 1, the Green Bay Packers hit on the biggest need on this roster, taking Eric Stokes, the cornerback from Georgia. On day 2, it was all offense. I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers. And in the 2nd round, Green Bay went with a center from Ohio State, Josh Myers, a 2-year starter there. He can theoretically come in and compete right away to replace Corey Linsley, also an Ohio State center, who departed in free agency alongside Lucas Patrick and John Runyon Jr., who will compete alongside Elton Jenkins for the center and guard spots. Then in the 3rd round, the Packers trade up to get Clemson pass catcher Amari Rodgers. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in the backfield. You can use him as a returner, jet sweeps, motions, all kinds of gadget plays, in addition to providing a complementary skill set to the players the Packers already have. Unfortunately, the cloud over all of this is who is going to be throwing him the ball. But for now, the Packers for sure in 2021 have at least one A. Rodgers who's going to be part of this offense.
This is Jeff Lloyd from Locked On Browns. The Cleveland Browns, with the 91st selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, select wide receiver Anthony Schwartz out of the University of Auburn. Game-breaking speed, Olympic speed. This is a player I had targeted for the Browns. He has the one thing, the one calling card that this wide receiver room does not currently possess: elite speed. Can he contribute early? We're not sure about that. But the fact is, if you can get Anthony Schwartz on the field, he runs the jet sweep motion. He runs the jet sweeps. He can go deep. He has elite separation with the ball in his hands. What is his calling card to possibly get him on the field early in his days in Cleveland? The fact that he is a mismatch nightmare. If he is on the field, defenses are going to have to adjust because he's the fastest threat they have. Go with 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, whatever you want to do with the rest of the offense. A player like Anthony Schwartz on the field gives you that vibe of what Kansas City has going on with McCall Hardman and Tyreek Hill. Andrew Berry just continuing to crush it for the Cleveland Browns.
Tyler Rowland here, host of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down the Tennessee Titans 3rd round picks. The Titans were originally slated to pick at number 85 in the 3rd round, but they chose to trade down with the Green Bay Packers to pick number 92 and add a 4th round pick, number 135. When the Titans came on the board at pick 92, they chose inside linebacker Monty Rice. Now, Monty Rice is a sideline-to-sideline physical linebacker who can come up the field and penetrate a gap, but he struggles in coverage, and there are some strange off-field concerns with Monty Rice as well. He has changed agents 3 times already during the pre-draft process, and that is a major red flag. A player out of Georgia having off-field red flags, something John Robinson knows a lot about. So an interesting and concerning pick there with number 92. At pick 100, the Titans selected defensive back Elijah Moore out of Washington. And Elijah Moore is a very instinctive, physical ball player at cornerback. He can play safety as well, but he's a guy who lacks elite athleticism, and he is a smaller cornerback at 5'9", 5'10". The Titans have been transitioning throughout the offseason to a pressure blitz man coverage team. Elijah Morton is more in the Logan Ryan mold of a guy who would play zone coverage, come downhill, so a little bit of a hedge there by John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. But the Titans come out of the first 100 picks and don't have a wide receiver, something to watch going forward for the Titans, as most fans and anyone who knows anything about the team are concerned to see.
The Baltimore Ravens round out day 2 of their 2021 draft class. This is Kevin Oestreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast. The Ravens selecting 2 players in round 3 of the 2021 draft after not having a second round pick, selecting guard Ben Cleveland out of the University of Georgia at 94 and cornerback Brandon Stevens out of SMU at pick number 104. For Cleveland, he's a stud, standing at 6'6", an absolute monster, a mauler in the run game, and should fit into Baltimore's offensive scheme very nicely and compete for the left guard starting job heading into the 2021 season. And for Stevens, a bit of an unknown, but a lot of potential. Played running back at UCLA before transferring to SMU and becoming a defensive back. It feels like the Ravens could move him to safety, but it seems like he'll also contribute a lot on special teams. For more on the Ravens draft class in 2021 and more on the Ravens in general, be sure to tune in to the Locked On Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
James Yarko and David Harrison here from the Locked On BUCS podcast, reacting to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' third-round selection. After going with some quarterback depth in round number 2, the Buccaneers went back to address the trenches.
Yeah, going back to the offensive side of the ball twice now on day 2. 95th pick overall in the 2021 NFL Draft. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers adding offensive tackle Robert Hainsey out of Notre Dame. Team captain, which I know you love, James. You know the team loves that leadership ability, and they love those big, tough guys. I mean, when you look at this, the offensive line, you can certainly make the argument that the Buccaneers needed to add some depth. You can never have too many good players on the offensive line, but when you have Aaron Stinney, who literally just helped your team win a Super Bowl championship as a backup interior offensive lineman coming in for Alex Kappa on that injury, you know you have a solid backup coming in to the 2021 NFL season. So now the Buccaneers, after extending Donovan Smith, deciding to address the perimeter of their offensive line, bring in another offensive tackle. Again, they pass on our guy Quinn Miners. I mean, we've been rooting for him, we've been pulling for him, but apparently the Buccaneers scouting department and Jason Light and those evaluators just not seeing some of the upside that I guess that we're seeing in Quinn Miners. And hey, I mean, we're sitting behind the desks and the Zoom cameras while they're sitting in the war room for a reason. So again, you got to trust in Light. But either way, you can't be mad about adding a guy like Robert Hainsey to the depth chart. And then in 2 or 3 years, if they need a new starting tackle somewhere for whatever reason, they have a guy that they can develop in the meantime, and he's joining a very solid group, going to learn a lot of good habits.
Yeah, 3-year starter, 2-year captain there at Notre Dame. They had a phenomenal offensive line. I mean, we talk about Ian Book being kind of a smaller quarterback. Does he project to the NFL? Well, these guys protected him and allowed him to get Notre Dame to the college football playoffs. And Hainsey is actually projected to move to guard at the NFL level, so it'll be interesting to see how he develops at the guard position, and he could potentially provide depth across the entire offensive line until the point where he would be slated to become a starter there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You know, those Buccaneers love them some versatility and some leadership. Robert Hainsey bringing both of those to Tampa Bay now here near the end of day 2 of the NFL Draft. For more on this pick and all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers, check out James and I, the Locked On BUCS podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
George Paton and the Denver Broncos were wheeling and dealing in round number 3. They had an opportunity to draft early on in the mid-70s, but the Broncos decided to trade back. I'm Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, and these are your 2 draft picks for the Broncos in round number 3. Offensive lineman Quinn Miners out of Wisconsin Whitewater. The Broncos had an up-close and personal view of him at the Senior Bowl, where he played through a broken hand and was dominating the opposition. He's going to be expected to be a depth piece for the Broncos, potentially at guard and center, and more than likely, maybe in a year or 2, he could open things up. But having him work with Mike Munchak, get some valuable experience. He's got the physical traits. He's got a nasty mean streak to him. This might be a very good pickup for the Broncos. And then they closed out round 3 of the NFL Draft at pick number 105 by selecting Ohio State linebacker Baron Browning, whose size and speed are a perfect combination for some sub packages that the Broncos may be looking to invest in, especially as it pertains to covering tight ends, being able to track mobile and athletic quarterbacks off the edge in terms of contain, and also covering running backs out of the backfield. Browning could be the Broncos' steal in this year's NFL Draft. Check out the latest episode of Locked On Broncos for a complete recap and analysis on these selections.
Defense is the name of the game for the New England Patriots on day 2 of the 2021 NFL Draft. I'm Mike DeBate of Locked On Patriots, and after using pick number 38 to select defensive lineman Christian Barmore out of the University of Alabama, Patriots selected Oklahoma defensive end Ronnie Perkins with pick number 96 in the 3rd round. Now, Perkins has great size for the position. He's listed at 6'3", 247 pounds. He had 5.5 sacks last season in 2020 in only 6 games. But as Dane Brugler of The Athletic reported, his 2020 season was indeed cut short by a 6-game suspension for a failed drug test. That may help to explain his slide to the bottom half of the 3rd round. But when he's on, Perkins is a disruptive run defender, and he's at his best when he's shooting gaps and slipping blocks. He's a pretty tenacious pass rusher with a good burst and pretty good closing speed. There are some inconsistencies when setting the edge, which is why I believe the Patriots will classify him more as an outside linebacker rather than a traditional edge rusher. Overall, this is a solid depth piece for the Patriots with a chance for Perkins to provide more value than his pick at number 96. For more analysis on new Patriot Ronnie Perkins and all of the Patriots draftees, stay locked in to the Locked On Patriots podcast, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Landon McCool with Locked On Cowboys, and this is your Locked On Now. And with the 99th pick in the 3rd round, the Dallas Cowboys select Deshaun Wright, cornerback from Oregon State. Never heard of him, guys. So I don't have much to say here, but I can tell you that he's a long, tall corner from a part of the country where they like to throw the ball a lot. So, I think everyone's kind of scrambling to figure out exactly what's going on. This feels like a coach's pick because it sounds like he had a little conversation with Dan Quinn right after his pro day. Honestly, even on the consensus board, this is a pick that probably wasn't on most people's boards. Even Dane Brugler seemed to struggle to have information on this pick, and he referred to this player as interesting. We'll see how interesting he is when training camp rolls around, and I'm sure everyone is scrambling to get Oregon State defensive tape to figure out exactly what the Cowboys have in their late 3rd round.